This is The Good Government Show.
We've been very aware of kind of negative consequences of a lot of the hyperbole online regarding elections and election officials. And I think that the county clerk, the person who's running the election, should not be the reason someone wins and loses. It should be the best candidate, best campaign. Good government is accessible, transparent, and is working to improve the experience of their constituents. We know that it can be frustrating. We know there's a lot of messaging out there to make people feel like that their vote doesn't matter. And that's one of the reasons why in our civics education program, we specifically emphasize that there's a lot of people who are paying a lot of money to get you not to vote. So we say, don't be hacked. Make sure that no matter what, you go to the polls, you make a voting plan, and you vote. For me, protecting the right to vote is protecting all people, and that's what we need to do to protect democracy.
Welcome to The Good Government Show. I'm your host, Dave Martin. On this episode, we're going to learn a lot about elections. Our guest is Katharine Clark, and she's the county clerk of Santa Fe County, New Mexico. We talk about elections, how elections are run and handled, and how we can all help ensure free and fair elections. And as the county clerk and being in charge of elections, she's faced challenges no elected official should. And she described herself as no nonsense. She's impressive. She also talks about a plan with high school students learning about voting and ice cream, it'll make sense, and volunteering. We also talk about the Native American staple, fry bread. Just listen, you'll hear more about fry bread. If you're concerned about elections, you're going to learn something. But there's more to this job, like marrying people and teaching about government. So join me as I talk to a county clerk on the front lines of government. Santa Fe County, New Mexico, County Clerk Katharine Clark, and she's up right after this on The Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is sponsored by Ourco. That means our community. Ourco has found a way to make government more effective. Ourco provides the OUR platform, and this is an app that blends in-person and digital interactions to connect people with their government, their county, their town, their state. The Ourco app transforms meaningful conversations into reliable data. They can turn results into projects and programs the community has essentially already approved. It's sort of like a flash poll by phone, but without the call and in real time and wherever community members are. Maybe they're at their house or their office or where they're out just talking about local issues. Maybe the choice is between putting in more local buses or expanding the bike lanes. Ourco can get you an answer immediately. With OUR, you can engage your citizens or any group, learn what they want, and build programs and policies that advance your county, your job creators, your constituents. So visit ourco.com, that's OURCO.com, and learn how they do it. And while you're there, book a demonstration.
I'm Katharine Clark. I'm the Santa Fe County Clerk from Santa Fe County, New Mexico. We're here at NACo, which is the National Association of Counties here in Austin, Texas.
You are the first county clerk I have spoken with. Tell me a little bit about the job. This is an elected office. Tell me about it.
So county clerks in New Mexico, it's a constitutional office, one of 5 that are countywide. And our job is to run elections. So we are the election official in each of our counties. We are also the recorder. So when you're recording real estate documents, we hold those public records. We are the clerk of the probate court. We also issue marriage licenses. We also are the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners. So our job is transparency. And then we have a lot of other miscellaneous duties that are under our purview.
Have you actually married people?
Yeah, I don't do officiation if I'm the person who has signed the certificate, but we have about 200 marriages a month and 400 in the summer.
Really? 200 a month?
Yeah, we are a very wedding destination county. So people sometimes when they're just driving through get married, just like I assume they do in Vegas.
Wow. How many weddings have you been to?
So many. So Wednesday and Friday is when our probate judge comes in, and we have weddings every 15 minutes.
How many in a day?
Maybe upwards of 20 we could do. So yeah, we're busy.
Why is it a wedding destination?
I think the city has spent some time on marketing. We are pretty well known for being an LGBTQ friendly locale. And as a result, we have a population of people who consider us a cool place to be. There's a lot of skiing. So sometimes when people are on vacation, they get married. But also I know that they've spent quite a bit of lodger's tax dollars on marketing it as a wedding destination. So we then when people arrive, they realize they have to go buy a marriage license. So we've actually been called up on Saturday morning, and I've gone to the office to issue a marriage license because people forgot they had to get a license to get married. Yep.
So you stuck around to watch the wedding.
Yes.
So I have never been to New Mexico. I've never been to Santa Fe. Paint a picture of your town for me, of your county.
Sure. It's the country's oldest capital. We are 400 years old. It's been continuously inhabited for maybe 3,000 years. We are also the tallest capital. People sometimes think it's Denver, but it's actually New Mexico. We are a mountain town. We have skiing about 20 minutes up the hill. We are all Pueblo and adobe architecture we're famous for. We're an arts town. It's the state capital. We are the only state capital that has a round legislature, bicameral legislature building. So it's a really great place to be. Great food, great culture. If you have never been to Santa Fe, come spend the week, do the feast days at the Pueblos, come do the Spanish markets, come see the art community, come to the hot springs, come to the skiing. We got it all.
Feast days at the Pueblo. You have to explain that one.
So feast days is really important. It's part of their religious calendar, but visitors are welcome during feast day. Of course, the idea is to be respectful. Don't take pictures if they're asking you not to, but they do tribal dancing and welcome people to come eat traditional foods and see what their cultures are all about. So it's a really, ability to sort of see how they've preserved their culture and working on teaching the next generation their dances and traditions.
And how do you like the traditional foods?
Well, the traditional foods are amazing. So they're very well known for fry bread, for green chili stew is a really famous one. In terms of Hispanic culture, we have sopapillas, which are deep fried tortillas that then are dipped in honey. The state cookie is the okay, I can't think of it for a second. Hold on. The state cookie is like lard, anise. Why can't I think of it?
I'll distract you. Yeah. Explain fry bread to me.
Fry bread is, it's just what it's called, but it's a traditional native bread. It probably comes out of when people lived in the cliff dwellings, as such as Bandelier and Pouillet, because people used to live along cliff sides and actually can go see the ruins. But about in 1300, they came off of the cliffs and moved towards the river and the valley. It may have been a dry period, so they needed to move closer to the river, but they were growing corn. And then when wheat came in with the colonists, they started making wheat-based bread, which is what fry bread is. And it's, baked in home ovens in sort of their adobe houses. And it's very, very tasty. And they serve it with, green chili stew. And it's a very traditional Pueblo meal.
Can you make fry bread yourself?
No, I would not try to make fry bread. I would not get it right. It's probably not hard to make, but I would probably not get it right. It is cooking at altitude. So you got to be kind of a good chemist to get things right in New Mexico. Like we're at 6,000 feet. So if you're trying to cook bread or anything that requires leavening, it's actually kind of a challenge. So
you said Santa Fe has been occupied for 3,000 years. Who lived there?
So we are the traditional indigenous lands. So the Tewa people. So there's three branches of indigenous language in New Mexico. There's Towa, there's Tewa, and there's Tawa. We actually we have 4 tribes in our county. It's San Ildefonso, Powake, Tesuque, and Nambe. And they're all kind of branches of the same language, but they are the traditional pueblos that have been there a very long time. And that's that valley has been occupied for a very long time in New Mexico.
What was attractive to you about being elected county clerk?
For me, it was about, I think there was a lot of questions about democracy and what government was doing and can we rely on the vote. So I started getting very interested in running for county clerk around 2017. So I did actually a couple of government training programs. And then when our current county clerk termed out, I decided to run for office and won 54% in my 5-way primary. There
has been a lot of discussion nationally about the election integrity. What would you say to folks can you assure them that everything's fine?
Well, I think one of the best assurance is to volunteer to be a poll worker, go through the training, see how your county conducts their elections. One of the things that we do is we work very hard to reach some of those who are maybe nervous or unsure about the election process and ask them to take the poll worker training. We work very hard on election security. We've introduced chain of custody programs. We GPS track all of our ballot transportation. We have video cameras on everything. So not only do we are assured of the process, we also have sort of a trust but verify philosophy in our office. I
was talking with a county commissioner in Pennsylvania who said that the head of their election office had been there for like 25 years. And in the last few years, they've gone through like 5 Board of Elections supervisors when they had one person forever. Any problems, any challenges for you now?
Well, we come from a state where there is a contingent of election deniers. And we've also had a gentleman, his name was Salman Pena. He was going around and shooting at elected officials' houses and was stalking them. So we've definitely had an interesting experiences as an election official. I think my first week in the job, someone was following me around. So it's been interesting. We've been very aware of kind of negative consequences of a lot of the hyperbole online regarding elections and election officials.
Does that in any way affect your interest and ability to stay on the job and the office to be able to continue to do the job?
No, I think, my grandfather met the Russians at the Elbe in World War II and then was in charge of a POW camp and took defending democracy pretty seriously. My dad did 22 years in the military. My great aunt was in the military. I think I can trace military experience back 10 generations in terms of either when this country existed or pre-colonial times. And so for me, being an election official is my generation's duty to serve their country. So
you're not intimidated?
Not at all.
That was a pretty quick not at all. Do you have that reputation?
I'm pretty known for pretty no nonsense. Yeah.
I see. Okay. We talked a little bit earlier and you told me about a program where you're teaching the next generation of students how to be voters. Can you explain that? Tell me what you're doing.
So one of the things that we've noticed is, just like I think any media discussion will tell you, is that people are very siloed. There's no dialogue between silos. People are just getting their news from social media and nowhere else. We're seeing less and less bipartisanship. We're seeing less and less people seeing the same news sources. We've seen civics leave the classroom in favor of other requirements. And so as the county clerk, I felt it was my duty to go talk to high school students about just basic civic education, and then to also try to combat some of that misinformation we're seeing by physically bringing the tabulators to the school, letting students look at it.
Say tabulators, you're talking about voting machines.
Talking about voting machines, yeah. So we bring a voting machine. We have what's called an ice cream ballot, which has super controversial things like, your favorite ice cream flavor on it.
What wins? What's the favorite flavor?
Depends on the high school, actually.
Okay.
Like Powahatan High School liked strawberry. The School of the Arts liked mint chocolate chip, right? So it just depends on where you're at. So we do an ice cream ballot. We talk to the students about what the voting process is. We pre-register them to vote because you can pre-register to vote in New Mexico, and then they actually go through the procedure of filling out their own ballot. And like best practice, which is start from the back, work to the front, right? Because those ballot questions are from the back, and sometimes people forget. And then they hand us the permit, right? So it's that whole we're replicating the voting process to see how easy it is. They hand us the permit. They feed their own ballot into the tabulator. They hear that ding. And then when we get to the end of the voting period, they get to see which ballots were cast and the results tapes to see that it does count the ballots correctly.
Do you do that every year with students?
We try to do that every year in every single high school, yes.
How many kids are you talking about?
So it depends on the high school. Some are as few as 30 to 40, and some are up to 100 students, depending on which history class we get access to.
So you're saying just about every high school kid in Santa Fe practices voting before they vote?
That is the goal, yes.
Have you seen it make a difference?
Yes, we've actually seen, and could just be the effect of Generation Z is very much more active, but we are seeing high school students coming in higher numbers. We are also actually seeing students, it's actually a recruitment, I'll just be honest with you, it's a recruitment mechanism for us because we can have student poll workers, and it's a good way of recruiting student poll workers because our poll workers traditionally are older and retired, but we have all this new technology, tablets, right? All of this very technical stuff. So it's really good to pair a high school student with an older presiding judge so that they can be the tech support for that presiding judge trying to manage a giant polling site. And it's a really great way to teach kids about government when they volunteer as a poll worker, and they actually do get paid, so that's nice. But our goal is to make sure that every student graduates from high school understanding that voting is very easy, but also that their vote counts. We have very close races in New Mexico. Yes, it's not the presidential. We're a very blue state, but those local school board races, it's a 300 total vote count. So one vote can really make a difference.
Do they understand that?
Yes, they do. Kids are bright. They get it.
You said pre-register. You have to be 18 to vote. Do you have to be 18 to register?
You can be 16 to pre-register. And then when we know that you're going to be 18 before the general election, we take you out of suspense during a primary so that your registration is ready to go and you can walk up to any polling place and vote in the primary if you're going to be 18 for the general election.
So I don't know when your primary is, but it's
June of the even numbered years. Yeah.
So in a 17-year-old kid who turns 18 December 1st, actually it'd have to be November 1st.
Yeah, early November, they would be able to vote. Yes.
So they can vote in the primary at 17 and then vote in the election, the general election, assuming that the timing is right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that unique to Arizona? Other states do that.
Well, it's New Mexico, and that's all right.
Wow. Sorry. Was that a huge faux pas I just did?
It's all right. But we, I guess you're just checking if I was paying attention. But yes, I don't.
Did talk to somebody from Arizona a little while ago.
I don't know. I mean, it is something that we are trying as a way to get students more involved, right? The idea is that if you were to vote in the general and you didn't get a chance to vote in the primary, then you didn't get to choose who was on the ballot that you're seeing in general. So the idea is when you can vote in the primary, then you have ownership of the entire election process. What
do you say, and what would you say to people who say, oh, the elections aren't fair, the system is horrible, nothing is right, I can't trust the election?
First thing is to volunteer to be a poll worker, and then volunteer to be a challenger. I mean, one of the things that's really important in New Mexico is we're constitutionally obligated to make sure that every single polling place has a presiding balance of Republicans and Democrats and Libertarians as the presiding judge and election judges. That's actually constitutionally required. But also every party can send known as challengers, and they come and they make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So it's a very transparent process, and it's important that observational element is happening so that we, that even if we are unintending to do something wrong, that our mistakes are caught before the end of the election.
Is that different than being a poll watcher?
Okay, so there's three different kinds of things in New Mexico. There's challengers, and they're appointed by the county party. So my county parties appoint challengers. They, in New Mexico, now have to be trained on basic rules of what they're allowed and not allowed to do. That's a new law in New Mexico, but they can show up with a letter of appointing, and then they just become the challenger. And there's one challenger assigned to each polling place. A watcher are people who are appointed by the state party, and they go through the Secretary of State. You have to give the Secretary of State 7 days notice. And then observers are usually people from like UN or other organizations that are just observing the election process. I
know that in past elections, there have been people who are, using air quotes here, poll watchers that seem to be more interested in intimidating people from voting.
Yeah. So there are very strict rules about being a challenger and being a watcher. When you show up to a polling place, we actually have a credential check-in. You are issued credentials by the presiding judge. And the rules are such that if you are doing something outside of the scope of what you're allowed to do, we actually require that your appointment letter, have the cell phone number of the person who's from the party. And we definitely call it if you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. So
that thus ensuring more in election integrity, yeah?
Yes.
Have you had problems?
We've had one or two people who, were very enthusiastic, and we've had to call their wrangler, and their wrangler calls them and says, knock it off. And then it's not a problem. So
very enthusiastic, and their wrangler calls them off. All right.
So, a lot of it's just people who just don't know the rules, right? So
I guess New Mexico still is in many parts the Old West, yes?
Yes. Sometimes. Yes. Yeah.
All right. After you get done with this episode, hear more good government stories with our friends at How to Really Run a City. Former mayors Kasim Reed of Atlanta and Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and their co-host, journalist and author Larry Platt, talk with guests and other mayors about how to really get stuff done in cities around the nation. Check them out where you're listening now or through their nonprofit news site, thephiladelphiacitizen.org/podcasts. Now we're going to get to the heart of your experience and the heart of your thoughts on government. You've served for a little while as a county clerk. From where you sit, define good government.
Good government is accessible, transparent, and is working to improve the experience of their constituents.
How do you judge your success as providing good government?
I actually specifically poll my for elections. We actually have a QR code on the door, and we have a post-election survey. We do debriefing process with all of our poll workers, and we work very hard to fix iteratively every election to improve the process every single time.
And what do you hear? What kind of feedback have you got?
So we know when maybe one poll worker was didn't know the rules very well, and we immediately respond and change it. For poll workers, we actually discovered that we should be doing a mentorship process because older poll workers were starting to retire, and we wanted to retain that institutional knowledge. So now we have a mentorship process during the early voting period. So that way people who are not quite ready to step up learn how to do it during early voting so that on election day they can become a poll worker, and it's working very well. We actually are the first county in New Mexico, the last 3 elections, to post our early and absentee results first.
What should people look for to determine if they're getting good government? What should they use as their yardstick?
That's a good question. I think that local governments right now are struggling with retention of employees. They're struggling with people leaving. They're struggling with pay. But I think that, a willingness to get back to you, even if they don't know the answer, is very, very important for government. It just means that they still care, even if they can't quite solve it that moment. They are caring, and then they're following up with you, trying to make sure they fix it.
So people should make sure they get feedback from their elected officials.
Absolutely.
If they don't think they're getting the government that they want, I won't say deserve. If they're not think they're going to get the government they want, what should they do?
Register to vote and vote, I think, is really important. What we're seeing all over the country is people don't have faith in government, which means they're not voting. And what you know from the campaign world is that when you don't vote, then those campaigns don't even bother to knock on your door, right? You've become an infrequent voter, so they don't care. So you should always show up and you should always vote, even if you're not really that jazzed about who's on the ballot, because just from the sheer fact of doing that, you become the person who's raised their hand to be counted. And that means that elected officials will come talk to you. Campaigns will come talk to you. Your answer will be more in the mix. It also means that your government will be more representative. So, we want to make sure that people are voting so that the people who are in charge know that at least they've had a significant amount of the population voting for them. You've been at this office for a little while. You've said you've already announced that you're going to run for re-election. What would you like people to know about how government works? I think for government, what most people pay attention to is presidential. So we see very high turnout in the presidential years, but they don't understand that actually the person who's making the most difference in your day-to-day life is the person at the lower end of the ballot. So that's your school board, that's your commission, that's your city government. Most people don't even know what those people do, but your roads, your sewers, your trash, all of that is done by people at the local government level. And you should really get to know who your government officials are. I mean, most people that I talk to can't name who their commissioner is. They don't know who their city councilor is. They don't know what those offices do. I think it's really important to know. Well, certainly. I mean, do they know that those offices exist and that they have functions? They don't know the offices. They don't know they have functions. One of the reasons why we've done our civics education program, just to give people just a general idea of what, who you should be contacting when you have a certain kind of problem. Have any of the kids that have gone through this system, have any of them, are they old enough yet to even run for elected office? No. So I've only had office for three years, but they probably could run. I haven't seen any on the ballot, but I know, some have gone off to college and, might be back and might be running. We hope. You got a few political science majors out of this? Yes, we definitely have some political science majors. Have any of them come and, come to meet you, come to your office, spend the day? Yeah. So we have an internship program. So some have expressed interest in our internship program and then have gone on to do, political science in college. Many of their parents have actually written emails to us thanking us for engaging students. They've seen a change among the kids who, they said, you're the only elected official who's ever interacted with my kid. And thank you for that, because you just made them feel like someone cared about what they thought and what they think. So, I really do think, showing up, even if you don't know the answer as an elected official, is really important. Who is your hero in government or in politics? That's a really good one. You laugh like, nobody. No. It's, so I really, when I went to college, I had a congresswoman, her name was Barbara Lee. and she was really a force of nature. And I spent some time in her office just shadowing her and her staff, and I thought her constituent services were excellent. And I saw very much the same with our local Senator, Ben Ray Lujan. I think his commitment to constituent services is unparalleled. He's really, he may not know the answer, his constituent services may not the answer, but they always follow up. Always.
That's what you want, to make sure you're heard and someone's actually paying attention, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I have never been to New Mexico. I'm coming to Santa Fe. You talked about fry bread. What are we eating? Where are you taking me? Where are we going out? Let's have a meal.
So the best red chili is a place called La Choza. It's where all the locals and politicos come and eat lunch. You'll see all of the, everybody in local government. It's the best red chili, but we also have things.
Stop right there. Red chili. What's red chili?
Red chili is just the ground roasted red chili that, and it becomes a red chili sauce. You see it usually on beef and chicken in enchiladas, but it's like, it's excellent. We also are famous for
beans or no beans in red chili.
No, it is not. It is just a red sauce you put on your meat. There is no beans in it. We also are known for green chili, which are hatch green chili, right? We have this rivalry with Colorado pretty famously about our green chili, and New Mexico, of course, has the best. But if you're a true politician, you always say Christmas, and Christmas is you have both red and green. So when anyone asks you, are you a red or a green person? You, as a politician, you, of course, say Christmas.
So red chili, what else?
Green chili. Then we are known for enchiladas. We're known for, typical New Mexican food. Chicharrones, they're sort of like chunks of pork that are deep fried, and they're almost like you put them in a little tube, like cardboard tube and eat them. Pretty famous for that. But we also have pretty fine dining in New Mexico. We have Geronimo's and several other really famous restaurants that are really delicious. So.
Any particular cuisine they serve at Geronimo's or other places you mentioned?
It's like kind of California or sort of New Mexico with a California twist on it. Yeah. So it's like, local food and flavor, but, with like a French Laundry kind of twist on it. It is pretty, New Mexico is known for the foodie culture, from everything from hole in the wall food trucks all the way up to, very fine dining. So
when did you know you wanted to get into politics? Growing up, was it something you thought about? You said you came from a military background. Did you want to join the Army, or did you want to become president of the United States? I was interested in joining the military.
And I was considering it for some time. I always knew I wanted to do politics because, sort of high school experiences. My mother is kind of a, modeled activism for me. And, there's sort of a famous incident at my high school where they were bullying kids who had come out as gay, and the high school wanted to maybe not let them go to prom or not let them participate in activities. And my mother really fiercely mama beared and just said, even though they weren't her kids, and said, try me. And so they dropped that idea. So I think for me, protecting the right to vote is protecting all people, and that's what we need to do to protect democracy. So.
And I think you said earlier to me, there was one particular incident that made you so annoyed. You said, I want that job.
Yeah, there was an incident when I was helping a friend run for city council. At the time, California did not have what we call voting convenience centers. It was precinct voting, so you had to go to certain precincts. The ballots, unfortunately, because so many students had pre-registered, they weren't all actually in the voter file at that point. So a lot of them had to use provisional ballots. And then the county clerk, unfortunately, was behind on, they had misestimated how many ballots they would need that day. So there was a 4-hour to 5-hour wait for them to print more ballots. And a lot of students didn't vote that day, which I think actually ended up costing the person who was a student running for city council the race. And I think that the county clerk, the person who's running the election, should not be the reason someone wins and loses. It should be the best candidate, best campaign.
So you looked at that and said, I can do that better.
My granddad was an operations geek. My dad is an operations geek, and I think I'm an operations geek. So I just kind of went like, all right, well, I have some ideas.
Fair enough. In your 3 years, can you give me, we are the Good Government Show, so we like to bring it back to good government at the end. Can you give me a good government project you're especially proud of?
Yeah, so we took a project that had been going on for 20 years, which was digitizing all of the records. We have records going back 200 years in Santa Fe County, and we finished the 500,000 records digitization, and we also just launched our self-service portal. So now people can, at 2 a.m. in their pajamas, buy their real estate documents and have them emailed to themselves. We also are the first county to text you, have a texting tracking program for people when they're tracking their ballots. We have a much revamped voter information website, santafe.vote, which is the central portal for learning about how to vote. And we have wait time tracking. So that way, if you're wanting to figure out how to vote quickly,
that all probably came as part of the high school project. It all sort of came together.
I know it's just one of the many things we're doing in Santa Fe to, use technology to improve government. That's my big push.
And get more people to vote.
We have we have the second highest turnout in the state, and I'm determined to be number one. So
I was just going to ask, what's the turnout?
So for the midterm, we're about 67%, and we're hoping to reach 80 if we can, one of these presidential years. Yep.
I am always stunned when I see, especially at the presidential level, the low turnout, the low numbers. How do you combat that?
We do a mix of radio. We do turnout training with all of our parties and activist groups. We teach them about ballot chasing. We encourage people to actually request a ballot early, because that way we have an easier time pushing them to vote. We do all the things we know from scientific studies that say turnout is important. We talk about, we do lots of radio. We do lots of newspaper. We do lots of sort of free media. We do community events. We do all of everything that we can. If I had more money, I would do 10 times more things.
And when you see the turnout numbers, do you just sit there and go, "Ugh, what's wrong with these people?"
Well, we know that it can be frustrating. We know there's a lot of messaging out there to make people feel like that their vote doesn't matter. And that's one of the reasons why in our civics education program, we specifically emphasize that there's a lot of people who are paying a lot of money to get you not to vote. So we say, don't be hacked. Make sure that no matter what, you go to the polls, you make a voting plan, and you vote.
Well, I have good news for you. First, I vote. Second, I was a poll worker. So,
well, awesome. You're one of the good ones.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, I was a poll worker. My job was to enforce the line. They were worried that in New York City, they were worried that the lines were going to get out of control. So I don't know why. I guess I was a former college bar bouncer. Yeah. I was in charge of the line.
Well, you are rather tall, yeah. But I think for me, I feel that no voter should wait more than 14 minutes to vote, and we've worked very, very hard to study where voters are voting. So if we see a lot of downtown voting behavior because people are voting during work, so we've actually increased, and we spent a lot of time operationalizing, studying, looking at where data analytics from the Google site where people are thinking about voting and then adjusting accordingly.
Well, Katharine Clark, County Clerk for Santa Fe County, New Mexico. Thank you very much for talking with us. It's been a pleasure meeting you and chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And keep going with good government and getting those kids out to vote.
Thank you so much.
Where do you get your news from? Where do you get your state and local government news from? Because that's getting harder and harder. And it's essential to stay updated with your community. And it's becoming increasingly important to know what's going on in other cities and states, because they're likely facing challenges that you're grappling with too, or you're going to face eventually. That's why we'd like to welcome our new partner, Route 50, to the show. Route 50 is a leading online publication covering state and local governments across the country. They've written about states protecting themselves against the rise in cyber attacks, counties using AI to better support citizen services, local responses to crumbling infrastructure and extreme weather, and much, much more. There's a lot there. It's a one-stop shop for issues affecting state and local governments and their residents. That's you. That's all of us. Do yourself a favor and go to route50.com to see the topics and solutions they cover and learn what other people in government are doing. They also deliver a daily newsletter called Route 50 Today. I see it in my inbox every morning. I check it out, and you should too. Thanks again, Route 50. We're excited to have you on board and being a partner here at the Good Government Show. What is it that county government does? That's the question county commissioners get asked the most. And the simple answer is everything. On the Good Government Show, we're so lucky to have talked with so many county commissioners and other county officials that have shown us how effective county government is. County government dates back to, get this, 1634, making it one of the oldest forms of government in the United States. Think about it. Roads, highways, hospitals, schools, recycling, law enforcement, water, sewers, and most of the county, those services are maintained by the county. That's county government. The National Association of Counties represents all 3,069 counties across the USA. NACo helps county government work better together through things like sharing best practices. When county government works well, that's just good government. Your vote counts, a good lesson not just for high school students, but for all of us. It sounds like the elections in Santa Fe County, New Mexico are in good hands, and not unsurprisingly, County Clerk Katharine Clark's best advice to get good government is to vote. And, try the red chili next time you're in New Mexico. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening. Hope you got some good insight into voting. I did. Make sure to listen again for another episode when I talk to another government leader on good government. And please share us with your friends, like us, and review us right here where you're listening. I'm Dave Martin, and this is The Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is a Valley Park production. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic. Please subscribe, then share us, and like us and review us. That's the best way to make sure we're able to keep telling these stories of our government working for all of us. Then listen to the next episode of The Good Government Show.